Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06. It's O'Connor and Company. And boy, Julie Gunlock, you are. Remember when we first met and I asked what you would get if you won the lottery, and what was your answer?
Revenge. You were expecting me to say something. A boat,
Like
a house,
a
car,
an
and I was
island.
Like, let me think about this. Revenge.
What would
and
you get if
fell
you
out
won
of
the
your
lot-
chair.
yes.
You were laughing so hard.
And now it's all coming home here the day before the election. Accounts will be settled.
They will be.
This is the day the Corleone family settles all outstanding debts. Coming up in 30 minutes, Trevor Maddich will reflect on the Commanders' commanding position now in the NFC East. 8:05, Sean Spicer will give us his final analysis of the electoral map. And then at 8:35, Annetta Catchings, who was in that viral video out of Alexandria, where she got face-to-face with your typical white liberal
Yes.
woman.
Yes.
I'm restraining myself and allowing you to take up the baton. Joining us right now is Joe diGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, and a fan favorite here on this program. Good morning, Joe. We made it. It's election eve.
It's election eve. Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Julie. And,
I wish you'd been in that coffee shop, Joe. Boy.
Actually, I'm glad I wasn't there. I'm afraid I'm beyond the point of interstellar gratefulness for being confronted by idiots in the public square. This would be an unhappy ending for that woman. If she got anywhere near my face, she would deeply regret it.
Yes.
As they say, Joe diGenova has no more bleeps to give. Yes. Joe,
right.
First of all, buckle up and stick with us over a couple of segments because there's a lot going on right now, especially on the eve of the election. Let's start first with your overall thoughts now and your reflection on where we are specifically. I think now at this point, the conversation pivots from the campaigns and their strategies and the last-minute rallies and the undecideds. I think we're already sort of focusing on election integrity, the methods in securing and validating ballots and the counting of said ballots. Where do you think we are right now?
Well, I think we're better off than we were in 2020. We would be even more better off if Ronna McDaniel had left earlier as the chairman of the Republican National Committee. As you know, in 2020, she had no ground game, no lawyers, was totally unprepared, and she contributed to the loss of Donald Trump in that campaign. She should have been replaced 2 years ago. She was replaced by Whatley and Trump, and unfortunately, it wasn't soon enough. It was too late, but they've done a brilliant job of preparing a ground game, getting lawyers in. There have been hundreds of lawsuits filed before the election to try and deal with specific issues and techniques of voting. But let me just say this. People must always remember this. Once the United States switched to mail-in balloting as a main form of voting, it was axiomatic that the amount of fraud would increase dramatically. And that's because mail-in voting is the least secure a form of voting. That's why Democrats love it. That's why they want it. That's why they shove it down your throat. The best form of voting is early voting in person and voting on election day. Unfortunately, I think we're stuck with mail-in balloting, and it's going to take a major scandal to change the way mail-in balloting happens. But that's where we are. I mean, we're ready. We've got people on the ground. We've got lawyers ready to sue. But courts have proven repeatedly that they don't want to interfere and say that votes don't count because they don't like that power.
Right. And speaking of the reason why in-person voting is so important, first of all, because the biggest reason is there are people watching at all times. There are election monitors. It is a live experience,
really?
Right?
Oh, gosh. Wow, it's harder to cheat.
Exactly. And that brings us to your new adopted home state of Florida, where the Justice Department wanted to send in federal election watchers down to Florida, which, I mean, that has there been some issue in Florida that we should know about? In fact, Florida, ever since the 2000 hanging Chad, has been a great state. Yeah. And your governor has said, no, you're not welcome here. So what's this showdown looking like?
this was, of course, there was a problem in Florida. They were doing everything correctly.
Yes,
and
Republicans are winning.
Merrick Garland and his band of merry thugs from the Civil Rights Division and the Election Division wanted to create a fake crisis and say, well, we better send monitors to Florida because people are actually able to vote and bad people who shouldn't be voting aren't voting. And that's because this Justice Department is a collection of people who don't worry about what the law is. They worry about the way they want to have outcomes occur. I just don't know how Merrick Garland gets up every morning other than through self-delusion and believes that he's doing the right thing. This is a man who, remember, was just one short step away from the United States Supreme Court. Unfortunately, he ended up being Attorney General and has done a lot more damage than he might have done as a justice, although thank God for Mitch McConnell's only great act as Majority Leader, keeping him off the court.
Joe, meanwhile, in Georgia, and we are starting to see some of these election shenanigans that we saw in 2020 as well. In Georgia, they've said that they will accept, the Democrats have said that they will accept ballots after the early period has ended. Apparently, the Republican Party in Georgia has now sued and hoping to stop that. Have you reviewed this case? Do you think they have a chance at stopping this, which is, again, accepting ballots after the appropriate time set out by state law?
Well, once again, Democrats, when they don't like the rules, they change them, even if it's unconstitutional and illegal. Remember, under the Constitution, state legislatures write the rules for elections and how they're conducted. Courts do not have the power. Secretaries of state and boards of elections do not have the power to change the rules governing the counting of ballots. That's exactly what's going on in Georgia. They are violating the rules. It should be stopped by a court injunction. We'll see whether or not that happens. But this is the problem with mail-in ballots. Once again, there's no chain of custody that can ever be proven other than the signature and the date and the envelope. It's the worst form of voting. And the United States Commission on Voting said that many years ago. James Baker, Jimmy Carter, all concluded it's the worst, most unsafe form of voting.
We're speaking with Joe diGenova, legal analyst for the District of Columbia. Excuse me, legal analyst here and also former U.S. attorney for the District of
legal
Columbia.
Analyst, by the way. By the way, the district does need a legal analyst.
Yes, to say the least, which certainly does. Just in terms of the politics, we've got a couple of other issues we want to bring up with you, but just in our final minute of this segment, Joe, based on the politics of it, how do you assess the campaigns right now in terms of their last-minute moves? We just noted that Bill Clinton is in New Hampshire, of all places, which seems like an expanded map for the Democrats. I don't think he's there because they've been in the driver's seat in New Hampshire, so that's got to be an indication that there's issues. And Donald Trump, by the way, came to Virginia over the weekend. What's your assessment here on where these things might fall into place tomorrow night?
Well, I think what's most disturbing are some of these late polls, like the one in Iowa that was ridiculous on its face about Harris being up, I think, 4 to 5 points or some ridiculous number, when Trump is clearly ahead in Iowa. It's a state that's not going to flip Democratic. And what that means about polling and polling data. Polling has become a weapon. It's not a way to get information anymore. It's become a weapon. And at the end of this season, with a day before the election, a few days, that type of poll, I'm sorry, I don't care how respected this woman is who ran that poll. I can't remember her name, but I got to say something. Yeah. That poll was purposefully wrong. It's
election interference is what it is. Yeah.
The methodology that was used is not sound. And if she can stand up and say, oh, yes, it was all day long, that result is utterly ridiculous. As far as the general scheme of things, I think it's clearly pretty close because of the split between male and female, black and white. I think Trump is clearly going to pick up more black votes and more Hispanic votes. That's going to help him in certain key districts. I think if I were a betting man, which I am, I would bet on Trump to win the Electoral College. I think he's going to come very close, if not, in fact, take the popular vote. But given the degree of illegality that Democrats have been historically famous for, remember, the jokes about Cook County and Wheeling, West Virginia aren't jokes because they weren't true. They're jokes because when Mayor Daley said, how many votes do you need after the election was over, that's because there is corruption in those democratically controlled cities. Yeah. Whether federal courts like to hear that or not, that happens to be an absolutely verifiable truth.
All right, stay with us, Joe diGenova. We got some more questions for you. Thank you so much. 7:17 here on O'Connor and Company with Larry and Julie. And if any of you need a reminder as to why you tune in here to start your day and take us with you from your, alarm clock to your bathroom, to your kitchen, to your car, to your workplace, I want you to understand.
Not the bathroom.
Maybe just to,
maybe
brush your hair and teeth, perhaps. Good. Yeah, we don't need that image. We want to remind you of how other people wake up and how they are greeted in the morning. Here's what the ABC audience gets from George Stephanopoulos.
What we do know is this. No election since the Civil War has posed such a test of our constitutional system. Whether to accept election results and the peaceful transfer of power has never been on the ballot like this. The stakes in this election are as high as it gets.
Joe, is that how you? Is this really not since the Civil War has there been such a test of our constitutional system? Whether to accept election results and the peaceful transfer of power has never been on the ballot like this. What are they signaling there, Joe?
Poor George Stephanopoulos. He's never gotten over Hillary's loss in 2016. And everything that happens in politics is now an epic threat to the Constitution, all the while ignoring what Barack Obama and what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done to Donald Trump. Tried to destroy the man, use the FBI against him, the Department of Justice, pending indictments. Can you imagine any other politician? Just think about this. He's got pending cases in federal court in D.C. and Florida. He's got criminal cases in Georgia and in New York. And all you can hear from them is they're worried about him. These people are fundamentally really sick. Stephanopoulos, by the way, if you listen to him and you hear the tone of his voice, he actually believes what he is saying. This is a very disturbed I used to say young man because he was so diminutive. He's now a very disturbed old man who has lost all sense of, just proportion. The guy's a nutcase. All you have to do is listen to that and listen to the tone of his voice. The only thing that's dangerous about this election is what the Democrats are doing, try to destroy it. That's what's dangerous.
Yes.
That's what's and I'll tell you something. I said this the other night at a speech. When did the violence against Donald Trump start? And then people give all sorts of views. I said, no, you're all wrong. Remember when Nancy Pelosi tore up the State of the Union address?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first act of physical violence against Donald Trump. She should have been expelled from the House of Representatives. She has the gall to continue to be in that House. She'll be coming back. I will never forget that. I've just been waiting for the moment when I could see her in person and say, Madam Speaker, as an Italian American, I've never been more embarrassed, but you embarrass me more than Al Capone.
Well, what's so funny, too, Joe, is that it obviously Stephanopoulos is talking about Trump there, but there's only one party that's calling for the destruction of the Electoral College and destroying the court and unleashing lawfare against political opponents. So if you actually listen to that and in your mind go, maybe he's talking about Kamala, he's absolutely right that we really are facing an election that does pose a test to our constitutional. Unfortunately, he wasn't talking about that. I want to pivot over, though, to the FCC. The violation, the Harris campaign and SNL hosting Kamala right before the election, Saturday before the election. This is a violation of the FCC rules, the equal time rule. But will anything come of this, Joe? Will there actually be any cost to Kamala for violating this rule?
Well, it's
actually,
NBC.
She didn't
It's
violate
NBC.
the rule.
Yes,
But
NBC.
NBC issued a statement. This is how bad it was. They issued a statement, a corporate statement, admitting that they violated the equal time rule. And they did it, I think it was yesterday. They did it, I'm not sure the exact timing of it. But now, is there enough time? Well, it doesn't matter. they're not going to give equal time to Donald Trump,
Right.
even if he wanted it, and it wouldn't make any difference. Although I think it would draw huge numbers of people. But that was a disgraceful but purposeful act by NBC News. They admitted that they knew they were breaking the equal time rule, and they did it anyway. Now think about acting with impunity. When they talk about Donald Trump and fearing acting with impunity and being lawless, what could be more lawless than having a license that's granted by the federal government and saying, you know what, you guys aren't going to do anything to me. We're going to violate the law. And one of the most important doctrines in broadcasting is the equal time rule.
Yeah.
Networks, stations fear it, but not NBC, because they know that this administration will do nothing. You know, if I would punish NBC by not watching their programs anymore. I don't watch them anyway, but now I would watch them even less. I don't know how you do that physically, but I wouldn't, and I certainly make their sponsors pay, because that's the nature of our game. That's the kind of country we are.
Joe diGenova, we'll have to leave it there. It's always good to talk to you. But real fast, though, one last question for you as a legal analyst and a political expert. 1 week from now, we will be speaking at this time. Will we know who the next president of the United States is by next Monday?
No.
Oh, Joe.
Joe.
Why would you leave? You know what?
You know what?
Fine. Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Hey, don't blame me.
Breaking our hearts.